In these next lessons, we're going to apply editing type commands to the object creation type tools we used in the last lesson, such as line and arc, circle, and so forth. So we'll get straight into it. I'm going to create a line with the L key, press space or enter. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the copy command. There's many times you'll want to copy the same object or similar object in a drawing. So to copy, there's two ways to do it. One way is to use the copy command at the command prompt by typing the letters CO and then press space or enter. Now it asks us to select the objects that we want to copy. At this stage we only have the one line, so we'll select that. Now it asks basically to select any more objects. Since we've already done that, we can just press the space or enter key. So that now lets it know we've selected everything. Now it asks us for a displacement point. So I may pick this point on the line itself if I wanted to as a reference point, and then I can move it to another position. As you can see, I'll be able to snap onto these other objects I've created now. So that's the basic sort of idea of the copy command. Now, if you wanted to be more accurate, if you didn't have another object to snap onto and you wanted to copy, we'll start the copy command again. So CO, we'll select our object, and we'll press the enter or space bar, and this time we'll select our displacement point. But now we're going to move our mouse in a certain direction. This time I'm going to move it to the right hand side of the screen. But instead of clicking, I'm going to type a dimension that I want to move that line at the command prompt. So I'm going to type 3000, and as you can see, it's, well, we're a bit out of scale here, but that's moved 3000. So I can do that again. We'll maybe make that a bit bigger. So we'll we'll type CO for copy, select that object, select the displacement point, move in that direction, and this time perhaps we'll put 20,000 so you can see a bit better the distance sort of moving. And as you can see, it's moved exactly 20,000 from that point to that point. So sometimes you need that sort of accuracy, and that's pretty much how you can go about it. You can do that with a lot of these sort of commands. You have the ability to either snap onto another object or enter a dimension, or you can just randomly place it, your pointer anywhere on the screen. That can be useful using the copy command for, say for instance, we had a landscape plan. I'm just going to insert something here, such as a tree. As you can see, we have our tree. Now if I was to select that, I can copy it using the copy command CO, select our object, and I'll pick a displacement point roughly in the middle of the tree. Now as you can see, if I move my mouse to the right, it's sort of locking in a straight line, but if I was going to do a landscape plan, I might want to turn ortho off. So I could press the F8 key, and now I can just randomly select places I want to copy. And once I'm finished with copying, I can press the space bar or enter key, or even escape key. Just press the space or enter key in this case. And as you can see, that's the basic idea of how the copy command works using the copy command at the command prompt. Now what I'm going to show you here, we'll draw a little bit of a smaller line, is another way to use the copy command. Now it's using what we call grips. I'm going to just change here to the color. Okay. Now as you can see, we have our blue grips on our line object. So if I left click on one of those grips, now it's now red. It's called a hot grip. If we look down here in the command prompt, we're going into a special sort of mode once that grip's become red or hot. So if I press the space bar, it's now saying we can move that object. If I press it again, we go to rotate, press spacer again to scale, one more time to mirror, and again it goes to stretch. And if I keep pressing that space bar, it'll just keep on scrolling through those same commands. To use the copy command using this method, you may have noticed there was no actual copy, but we do have the move command. So what we want to do is we do want to move this object, but we want to move a copy of it. So as you can see here in the command prompt, we have copy. So if we type the C key and press space or enter, it allows us now to move multiple copies of that line. So we can either click a point, again similar to what we saw before, or click it onto another object, or we can enter a distance, perhaps 5,000 might be good, and we can see a little line popped in there, or maybe we'll try 50,000 this time, and as you can see another line there. So that's another method you can use. Depends on what you're doing, and also even a preference for which way you prefer to work. Some of these commands we're going to be doing have one method that's better than another, but that's the basics of the copy command, and we'll move on to the next command in the next lesson. In this lesson we're going to look at the move command. This is probably the most basic one. There's not a lot that you do with this one. So here I've got some lines. These lines here I've got as representing a wall, that's the corner, and these lines here can represent a title boundary or site boundary of your property. So to move, we can use the move command by typing M, command prompt, and pressing space or enter. It's now going to ask us to select our objects. So now I've selected them, I can press space or enter. It's going to ask us for a displacement point, and we can select onto the point there, and now it's going to ask us for a second point, so where we want to move it to. And there we go, we've moved it over there. So that's the basics of the move command. Now I'm going to undo that. Alright, okay, now similar to the last command, if we select the objects, so we've got the grips up, and we left click on one of the grips, so it's now a hot grip. We go down to our command prompt and press the space bar. We've also now got the move command, and we can just select on that point, and we've moved our object. So that one's pretty simple, and similar to what I showed in the previous command, we can also do the copying in that method. In this lesson we're going to learn about rotate. Rotate can be very useful, and in fact you use it probably quite a lot in many different things. Now what I have here is similar to the previous lesson. We have these lines here that represent some walls, and what we can do is say we want to rotate these walls perhaps a certain angle to shoot off. What we can do is we can either use the command prompt rotate by typing RO at the command prompt, then pressing space or enter. It's now going to ask us to select the objects. So we've selected our objects, and we can press space or enter. It's going to ask us for a base point, so in this case from here. Now it's going to ask us for an angle. Now we can click anywhere. As you can see I have ortho on, so it's just snapping around. If I turned ortho off, as you can see I can just move that around. That can be useful in some cases. What we're going to do in this particular exercise, we're just going to enter a number. So I'm going to type 30 for 30 degrees and then press space or enter. And as you can see, it's now rotated from that horizontal line, it's rotated 30 degrees. Now I'm just going to undo that, and we'll do the rotate command again. So RO, going to select those objects, and we're going to press our spacebar and select the base point. Again, it's asking for a rotation angle. This time we're not going to snap, put an angle, we're just going to snap to a point. So we'll just use these lines up here for a moment, but if I highlight onto any of these lines, it's going to snap directly in that angle. So if I just click on here, as you can see it's perfectly lined up that angle there. So that's another way to use the rotate command. what we can also do, we'll just draw another line. We'll start the rotate command again, RO at the command prompt, press space or enter. We'll select our object, press space or enter. We'll select the base point. Now it's going to ask us for the rotation angle, which we did similar before, but this time if you look at the command prompt we can copy it. So if we type C and then press space or enter, we can now make a copy of that line. We can either click on something like we did before, or we can enter a dimension. So what I might do this time is show you how to rotate in the opposite direction. Before we rotated 30 degrees, and as you can see it went up that way from the horizontal line. But if we wanted to rotate it the other direction, all we need to do is press the minus key or subtraction key and then enter our dimension. So minus 30 degrees, press space or enter, and as you can see it's created a copy of that line 30 degrees from that one in the opposite direction. Something to note there, that when we copied that, it only copied it once. It didn't allow us to create any more copies than one that time around. What I'm going to show you this time around is we'll move these lines over, is we'll use the different rotate commands using these scripts again. So we've selected an object, we're going to left click on the grip. Looking at our command prompt down here, we're going to press the space key and we're going to press it again, and as you can see rotates come up. Now again, if we want to rotate a certain degree or so forth, we can do what we did before, but what we're going to look at this time is the copy command. So if I press C and then space, I can copy this in angles such as degrees. If I type 30, it's going to make a copy at 30 degrees, which you can't see that time because it's rotated it back right over the top of that one. But if I rotate it, say 60 degrees, you can see it this time, and at 90 degrees, or if we do minus 60 degrees or minus 30 degrees, you can see that we can rotate multiple copies. Also, you can see that I've got ortho snapping on at the moment, so I can just left click there if I like, or click in the same angles of that. But if I turn off ortho, as you can see, I can just freely keep clicking my left mouse button and create many copies. I just wanted to show this because, as I showed in the previous command, just using the RO command at the command prompt, it only allowed us to copy around once. So this time we can just keep rotating as many times as we like until we want it in the command. And to finish the command, all we need to do is press the space bar or enter key, as you can see. So that's the basics of rotate. We'll get into a little bit more of what we can do and how to use it further on down the track during some of the exercises that we do. But that's the basics of rotate. In this lesson, we're going to look at stretch. It's basically, as it sounds, you stretch an object to another place or another object. So to start the stretch command, we can just press the S key at the command prompt and press the space bar or enter key to start the command. Now we can select the objects that we want. So I'm going to select all this by dragging a window around it, and now we can press the space bar or enter key to say we've made our selection. It's now going to ask us for a displacement point, so we may select this point here, and then it's going to ask us where we want to move it to, and we can just move that to there. And as you can see, it stretched the whole lot, all the grips and everything that were involved in those lines. Let's move them to that wall. Okay, we'll undo that. Now we'll try a different method this time. We'll do the stretch again. Start the stretch command, so S at the command prompt. We'll select these objects, and once we select them, we'll press our space bar or enter key, and we'll select our base point, which is that corner. Now if I move my mouse to the right, you can see that it's stretching with my mouse. Now we can click onto a point as we did before, or we can actually enter a distance to move in that direction. So we may want to move 2000, which is in my case 2000 millimeters. So I'd enter 2000 at the command prompt and press space or enter, and it's now stretched those lines in that exact distance. Now, as I've shown before, if we select an object and we use these grips as hot grips, so we've made one red, we're able to basically just stretch only the one, because we've only got one grip selected. So if I was to left click here, only the things that were selected under that one grip have moved. So we'll just undo that. Let's select those objects again. Now, if we want to select multiple grips for stretching, we can hold down the Shift key on our keyboard and then left click the grips that we want to move. So we'll just click those ones, and now we can let go of the Shift key and then left click on any of those red grips, and then we can stretch. And as you can see, it's only stretching the ones that I've selected, and it's left that other one behind. So that's another way you can stretch, is by using the grips. That can come in handy in some cases. Another thing to notice here too is if we're going to select something, so we'll start the stretch command again, select the objects. Now we may have made an accident and selected these lines here when we didn't want to. So to deselect an object, we hold down the Shift key and then we can left click on it. And then I can press space to say I've made my selection, pick my base point, and then move. And as you can see, it's left those lines behind because we deselected them, and it's only moved those ones. So that's the basics of the stretch command. What I showed you there in terms of deselecting objects is the same for anything AutoCAD. You don't even need to be in a command. If I selected all these objects here and just hold down my Shift key and left click an object, that's now deselected, and I can reselect it again just by left clicking on it. So that's the basics of the stretch command, and even selecting and deselecting an object. In this lesson we're going to look at the last sort of major editing tool that we use for manipulating AutoCAD objects, and that's called the mirror command. So what we have here we're looking at is just a basic outline of a building, looking in plan view. Now, if this was a unit, we may want to make a copy of this unit. We could use the copy command, but if this unit was to be an exact mirror, we'd have to use the mirror command. So to do that, you can press the MI characters and press space or enter, and now it's going to ask us for the objects we want to mirror. So we can just drag a window around those and press space or enter. Now we can click starting point, and we can move which way we want to mirror. And as you can see, I've got ortho on, so it's just going pretty much directly in the direction I want to go there. If I move the mouse around, it gives me another option. If I had ortho turned off by pressing F8, as you can see, it'll allow me to mirror around any direction I like. So if I keep F8 on, it will give me a perfect mirror, and then I can just left click. Now you'll notice at the command prompt, it's asking us do we want to erase the source objects. Now if I press yes or Y and enter, it will create a mirror of this on the other side, but it will then also remove this one. So if we were doing a unit and we wanted to mirror them, we wouldn't want to delete that source object, so we would type the letter N and press space or enter, and as you can see, it's kept both. So that's the basics using that command, the command prompt, the mirror command using MI. Again, we'll look at another way of doing that. This time I'm going to create an arc, which is perhaps that could be a part of an elevation of a Gothic window or doorway. We're going to select our arc, and then we're going to left click on one of the grips where we want to mirror it. And if we look at our command prompt again, we're going to press the space bar and keep pressing it until we get to mirror. And if we want to mirror a copy, we can press the C key and press space or enter, and then we can just left click. if we're happy with that. And if I move the mouse around, you can see it's given me two options. Or if I turn off Ortho by pressing F8, I can now mirror that multiple times, which is quite similar to the rotate command in that sense. So that's the basics of the mirror command and the two different ways you can go about it. That's pretty much it for the main editing commands of the objects in AutoCAD, and we'll be moving on to other things in the next few lessons.